Welcome to another WC Sports podcast. I'm Colton with Wyatt, and we haven't done a podcast in a long time. Welcome back. Oh yes, it's going to be a good one. Well, thank you. But so let's have a good podcast. A lot of NFL stuff to talk about. Week of Christmas was just over. But let's have a good time. And first, the playoffs are just around the corner for the NFL. And playoff picture, the Chiefs and the Vikings after this week. At the time of the recording this, the Lions haven't played yet. They play tonight at the time of recording. We'll see how that game goes. But so far, the Chiefs and the Vikings right now, as it stands, have the 1 seed in each, the NFC and AFC. And then the Bills, Eagles both have the 2 seed, Ravens, Rams, 3 seed, Buccaneers, Texans, 4 seed. Those are all the division leaders. And the 3 wild card spots, as it stands right now, are the Steelers, Chargers, and Broncos, and the Lions, Packers, and Commanders. But still in the hunt are the Bengals and the Dolphins, trying to take the Broncos out of playoff contention, and then the Falcons trying to beat the Buccaneers for that division to make it into the playoffs. But how are you doing, Wyatt?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. What are you thinking about how playoffs are just around the corner, all the tension and drama, but what are you thinking about what teams do you think will be in? Do you think the Bengals will win, the Broncos will lose this week, or the Dolphins or the Falcons will make it instead of the Buccaneers? What do you think?
Yeah, so what's interesting is there's a lot of teams that still have a chance to make it into the playoffs. You have Chiefs, Bills, maybe even the Ravens, the Vikings, Eagles, Rams, Buccaneers, and then so there's a lot of teams that can make it in, so that's really fun to see. So it's kind of hard to say right now, but I think teams that are pretty much guaranteed spots into the playoffs are the Chiefs, Bills, and probably the Lions or the Vikings.
Yeah, so all the teams that are guaranteed a playoff spot so far. Some teams have a guaranteed spot. Like you said, the Chiefs are guaranteed one. The Bills are guaranteed one. The Ravens are guaranteed one. The Texans are guaranteed one. Those are all guys. The Steelers are guaranteed one, and the Chargers. So the only one in the AFC that isn't guaranteed a playoff spot is the Broncos, because either the Dolphins or Bengals can knock them out. But in the NFC, it was a little more interesting coming into the week. The Vikings and Eagles both were guaranteed spots, but the Rams coming into the week, the Seahawks were trying to win the division over the Rams. Rams, after this week, ended up making it to playoffs guaranteed. Buccaneers and Falcons both fighting for a playoff spot, so those teams are not guaranteed. And then the Lions, Packers were both guaranteed coming in, but the Commanders were not, but they beat the Falcons, so now they're guaranteed after this week. Vikings close to the number 1 seed in the NFC, the game we're all going to be watching this week. Lions versus Packers, Sunday Night Football, and whoever wins that is the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. Bengals and Dolphins are still in the playoff contention. Broncos trying to keep them from getting a playoff spot and keep their playoff spot in Tampa and Atlanta, both fighting for their division to make in the playoffs. Your top 5 fantasy people, I wrote down the positions, but let's just go through the top 5, just the top 5 guys that made the most fantasy points. Number 1, T. Higgins, Bengals wide receiver, had 3 touchdowns. He got 40.1 points, insane week for him. And his quarterback was number 2, Joe Burrow, 36.98 points. Just a great game for the Bengals, who beat the Broncos. We'll talk about that in a sec. Malik Neighbors, number 3, had a great game. Rookie wide receiver for the Giants, 36.1. Baker Mayfield, I don't want to talk about that game, but he got 34.56 points, threw for 5 touchdowns, and Jaden Daniels, 31.78 at number 5. So let's talk about Chiefs versus Steelers on Christmas Day. Chiefs improve to 15-1. Steelers lose the division lead because the Ravens won that day. They are now 11-5. So what are your thoughts on how the Chiefs finally looking? I think this game showed what they can do, and they're looking like their playoffs Chiefs we knew.
Yeah, they definitely took down the strong team, the Steelers. The Steelers are pretty good at playing football, and so it's a pretty big win for the Chiefs being able to defeat a team that's that good.
Yeah, Steelers, they need to win if they're locked into the playoffs, but if they're going to make it anywhere from the playoffs, they need to beat teams that are good. I know they lost to the Chiefs this week, and I think they've shown that they can beat the Ravens, but I still think they're on a little of a slow streak right now. But losing the lead of the division and the Ravens keeping that, I think they still have a chance to take the lead of the division, but maybe they won't. But Patrick Mahomes had 3 passing touchdowns. One of them was to Travis Kelce, and then Russell Wilson had no touchdowns. He just had an interception. So Ravens versus Texans, probably the most bizarre score I've ever seen in an NFL game. 31-2. Ravens had 31. They beat the Texans, who only got a safety. It was Derrick Henry got tackled in the back of the end zone. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry both had a good game. Mark Andrews only had 2 receptions, but it was for 68 yards and a touchdown. So, and then Joe Mixon can't stop his streak of bad play. Can he stop it? Do you think the Texans running back Joe Mixon, he hasn't been doing great. What do you think he should do if they're in the playoffs? So what do you think he can do in the playoffs to maybe improve? Because he's been in the slump the last 3 games.
Yeah, so I don't know what is going on there, but I think that it's definitely a possibility that they could come back, but their performance overall for everyone has been slumping. Definitely the past couple games. So it's a downward trend, so they might not be able to get out of it. We'll see.
Yeah, CJ Stroud he had an amazing rookie season, but he's not been playing like he was last season. But can they win a playoff game? You think the Texans, last few weeks they've not been showing any signs of just confidence or getting better. I know a lot of people are getting hurt, but can they win a playoff game? Because you've seen they're getting crushed by opponents that they'll probably play in the playoffs, like the Ravens. If they even make it, like, say they have the 4 seed, you're probably, at this point, if they keep that 4 seed, they're going to play the Steelers, who I'd say are almost as good as the Ravens. So do you think that they can win a playoff game and make it to another round of the playoffs?
I don't think they can. I think they're pretty far gone at this point.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. So White thinks they won't win a playoff game. I think they won't win a playoff game, but it will be close, I think. But can Stroud play like he did last year? Last year, he broke rookie records, and he made it to the second round of the playoffs, and then he finally got knocked out. But what do you think he can do to improve as he's having a sophomore slump?
Yeah, so I think that he needs to focus on working maybe with his running backs if they're struggling, so that they can make a lot of good passes during their game.
Yeah, the quarterback needs to make good passes to wide receivers for his wide receivers to do good and his running backs to do good. So I think he just needs to be a leader to his team and tell them that we can win. We just need to work on our drills and stuff. Do the Ravens look Super Bowl caliber? Do you think the way they played against a team that I still think is pretty good, they're not a terrible team. It's not like they beat the Raiders 31-2, but I think they look Super Bowl caliber. Do you think they can beat a team like the Chiefs? I think they can beat a team like the Chiefs, but I think the big question is, can they make it to the Super Bowl? Because I know you're going to play a team like, say, the Chargers or Broncos or Bengals even, but I think they can win that game. But say you play the Bills in the second round of the playoffs. Say you do play the Bills in the second round of the playoffs. I think the Bills are probably one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. Do you think they can overcome the underdog part of that, and you think they can make it to the Super Bowl?
I think that they could get through some of the teams like the Broncos or maybe even the Bengals, but I think they would reach a pretty hard barrier if they tried to go against the Chiefs or the Bills.
Yeah, so it's always an exciting game, but you always wonder, will there be an upset? I think the Bills upset the Chiefs in the regular season. That's the Chiefs' only loss. So what do you think they can... So I think, it's basically what do you think they can do to do it? And just, I think, work with your team and try and start to win games more in the regular season. I think if they play like they did in this game throughout the playoffs, I think they can make the Super Bowl. So next game we're talking about Thursday Night Football. This is probably the worst game of the year. Seahawks beat the Bears 6-3. I don't know what to think about this game, But I think what I do know is that Caleb Williams, he's getting a lot of feedback from the media that, oh, this guy's a bust. He's terrible. He's not going to be good. This rookie quarterback that was drafted first overall. I think he's playing well. His team, though, they need to focus on rebuilding this team because he's got DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, two good wide receivers. DeAndre Swift, a good running back. The defense is playing well. They have an interim head coach. I think hire a head coach and get pieces around him. I think he'll be good. So what do you think the Bears can do to focus on next season to draft some players and sign some other players, free agents and stuff?
Yeah, I think investing more in getting better players would be one thing. I think that if you don't have good players, you're not going to do anything spectacular. So either you have two options. You can work with players that aren't so good and really try to improve them during the season, which is going to be pretty hard, or you just have to really put in the money to get better players.
Yeah. Do they keep their head coach is a question. I don't think they will. I think they'll find a different head coach to kind of lead the team for next season. Staff was a big problem for them, but and the Seahawks need to think about next season. They barely missed the playoffs. They won. They had lost 2 games before that. They were trying to beat the Rams in the division to make the playoffs, but the Rams are really hot, and they beat the Cardinals, which we'll talk about in a second. But they beat the Bears, but then the Rams beat the Cardinals, and then a few other teams on Sunday needed to win for the Rams to lock in that spot, and it ended up happening, and the Seahawks can't make the playoffs. But they need to think about next season. They've got a lot of good pieces and good staff, so what do you think they can do to put this behind them and say, we're a good team, we just need to get even more pieces and start winning more games?
Yeah, so it's definitely a combination of everything. You need to put in a little bit more money, more time. So time and effort is really what you need to make your team better. Coordinating between all of the different pieces, like coaches and players, and on both sides, like offensive and defensive. So coordinating and really motivating your team to work harder at what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the motivating your team on working hard doing is a good piece. I agree with that. You need to do good. Briefly talk about the Chargers versus Patriots. Chargers absolutely demolished the Patriots 40-7. Drake May, he looks good, but they need to rebuild for next season. He's a rookie quarterback, was drafted 3rd overall in this past draft, but he doesn't have really any wide receivers or any running backs. So what do you think they can do to rebuild their offense and their defense to start building around this new franchise quarterback and start doing good? Because I think Drake May is the real deal.
Yeah, so I think maybe trading or drafting in more players that are higher up. You don't need to get like ridiculously good players, but you need to get players that you can actually work with ahead of time before the season to start getting something on the show.
Yeah, Patriots need to rebuild. But talking about the Chargers, they look good for the playoffs. They're locked into the playoffs because they won. I think they can beat some good teams. Quarterback Justin Herbert's doing good. What do you think? They're in the AFC too, so just like the Ravens, do you think they can beat people to make it farther than the playoffs?
If they skunk the Patriots the way they did, they have a pretty good chance of making it into the playoffs. A fair deal. They might not be Super Bowl caliber, but they'll definitely make it probably into the AFC or NFC if they really try to get something done.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, a great quarterback. He was drafted in 2020, but he's made the playoffs. I think he's at least made it once, maybe twice, but he's never won a playoff game, so I think he can get his first one this season. We watched the Bengals versus Broncos. That was a crazy game. Went in overtime. Bengals end up winning 30-24. If the Broncos had won, they would have been locked in the playoffs and knocked out the Bengals and the Dolphins, but they lost because the Bengals beat them. So Bengals, they keep a 5-game win streak now and looks pretty good. I think it was interesting that one of the announcers said that you don't want to play this team in the playoffs because if they're coming off a 5-game winning streak from the regular season, they're feeling like a really good team. They're on fire right now. So I think I agree with him. You don't want to face this team. The record doesn't show of how they've won 5 games in a row and how they're actually playing really well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that Yeah, so they have momentum, so they can go into the playoffs. So they have a lot of speed and momentum built up, so they can just run into the playoffs and let off all that steam, and they'll make it pretty far, I think.
Yeah. So what they need to do to get into the playoffs this week is they need to win, and the Broncos need to lose. Now the problem, you look at the schedule and say, oh, the Broncos are playing the Chiefs this week. They're absolutely going to get smoked because it's the Chiefs. Well, the Chiefs said they're going to play their backups to rest their starters because they've already locked in that number 1 seed in the playoffs. So they're going to play all their backups. So I think that's what the Bengals exactly don't want to see, because I know you're playing your starters against your backups, and normally that means your starters should win. So Broncos, I think, have a pretty good chance at winning. Yeah, some people are saying Joe Burrow should be the MVP. What are your thoughts on that? There's like Josh Allen should be MVP, Lamar Jackson should be MVP, and there's people that think Joe Burrow should be MVP, and I think Joe Burrow could be MVP. I think Lamar Jackson should get it, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's potential for him to be MVP. He's just going to have to step it up in the playoff rounds. So he needs to keep going, get some wins, get some strong performances, reduce sacks, and reduce bad plays and stuff. And I think he can do it then, but it'll be kind of hard for him now.
Yeah, Josh Allen, the favorite right now for MVP, and I think Lamar Jackson's probably the next person up for the MVP. Well, last game on Saturday, and then we're going to talk about 3 games that happened at the time of recording yesterday on Sunday. The Cardinals versus Rams. Rams beat Cardinals 9-13. Cardinals were already eliminated from the playoffs, but the Rams make the playoffs. But I think a good step towards the Cardinals for having a good season next year. They had a decent season this year, just couldn't make the playoffs. Their tight end, Trey McBride, gets his first receiving touchdown of the season. He's been outstanding all year, just can't get touchdowns, but he got one last week. What do you think the Cardinals can do? Rams are on a 4 or 5 game winning streak now, just like the Bengals, so they might be a scary team, but I want to focus on what do you think the Cardinals can do for next season?
Yeah, so I think it goes in general across every team. You just want to maybe put in more money, time, effort, and coordination. I think those are 4 things that are key for a team. Honestly, I don't know as much as like professional head coaches or somebody like knows how to invest in stuff like players, but that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that was a quick, brief one. Kyler Murray had 2 interceptions to 1 touchdown, but yeah. Sunday, Colts at Giants. Giants play spoiler and knocked the Colts out of the playoffs. Colts had to win. Giants end up beating them 45-33, improved to 3-13. But I think that's big for the Giants to build up confidence that they can beat teams that are good. No Anthony Richardson. The Colts were on their backup quarterback, but still, their backup quarterback had a lot of experience, so I think it was a good game for the Giants. Jonathan Taylor, though, the running back for the Colts, had another great game. Possibly could get traded. I don't know. That's just something I think they might trade him just to get more rebuilding around Anthony Richardson, because I don't think they're doing great right now. But Malik Neighbors has an amazing first season as a rookie. He's a rookie wide receiver drafted 6th overall, had 2 touchdowns this game and over 1,000 yards this season. So great for him. But really good game. Packers versus Vikings. That was a very good game. Jordan Love and the Packers couldn't get anything going until the end of the game, but it was too little too late. They lose 25-27, and the Vikings get that 1 seed from the Lions unless the Lions win tonight. But the Packers need to start winning big games. If they're going to make it far in the playoffs, they have to beat the Vikings, and they have to beat the Lions, and they have to beat the just thinking Commanders and stuff like that. So what do you think they can do to win those big games?
Yeah, so obviously motivation's one thing, but that can be hard to get if you've had a bad day, and sometimes you can just have an off game even if you're on a streak. So I think at this point, if they want to excel in this time of the season, they're going to need to obviously just the most easy thing to focus on is coordination right now. So coordinating everybody together and making sure that everybody can be together to win the game.
Yeah, I agree. But the game, like I said, everybody's going to be watching. Vikings versus Lions. You're a Lions fan, I know that. So, Sunday night game, I'm going to definitely watch that. Probably maybe the game of the year. I know we said that about the Bills and Lions, possible Super Bowl game, but this is for the 1 seed in the playoffs. And if whoever loses goes all the way down to the 5 seed, so it could make it very interesting. So what are your thoughts on that game and what the Vikings can do to win, what the Lions can do to win? I know the Lions have been struggling just a little bit lately, but what do you think they can do to overcome the Vikings?
Yeah, they're on a really good streak this season. They made it to the playoffs last year. They made it pretty far in, so I think that they have a large amount of potential. The Vikings, I haven't seen them in a while. I haven't thought about them in a long time, so it's interesting to see them this far up, this far into the season. So this will be an interesting game. I think that the Vikings could pull it off, but I think the Lions, they have an enormous amount of chance. They have everything that you would need for a win as well.
Yeah. Lions coming into tonight's game are 13-2. Vikings just beat the Packers. They go 14-2. So should be a great game. If the Lions win tonight, which I think they will take the 1 seed from the Vikings. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong there, but whoever wins next week gets the 1 seed. That's what I know. So Michael Penix Jr. for the Falcons loses to the Commanders 24-30. And the Commanders, Jaden Daniels is a phenom rookie quarterback. He's looking great, and the Commanders locked in a playoff spot. So Commanders are in the playoffs. Falcons still fighting to try and beat the Buccaneers for the division. What they need to do to get into the playoffs is they need the Buccaneers to lose next week, and they need to beat the Panthers next week, which I don't hope doesn't happen because I'm a Panthers fan. But I'm torn because I hate the Buccaneers, and I'm fine with the Falcons. They're fine, but I hate the Saints and Buccaneers. So would rather have the Falcons in, but I want to win for confidence. So, but like we said, Commanders locked into the playoffs, and Michael Penix looking good. So yeah, not a lot to say about that game. Went to overtime, pretty exciting. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So NASCAR close to being underway, just a couple months away from the Daytona 500, which is probably the biggest race of the season, even though it's not the championship. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. Just who do you think's gonna win? I just want to put it out there, just based on last season, what you've heard. Who do you think let's say 3 favorites are in that race?
For Daytona 500?
Yeah, Daytona 500.
So I'd say Wayne Byron. He won last season. He's like he's computer video game racing guy early on. So I think he has a really high chance. I think another one would probably be maybe Kyle Larson or Alex Bowman. So the Hendrick team, they can dominate it. Kyle Larson, he's overall a good driver. He could do it. And then Alex Bowman, he came runner-up in the Daytona 500, so I think he could come back for a strong performance with his teammate Wayne Byron.
Yeah, and there might be a couple upsetting people. I know Joey Logano wouldn't be an upset, but he won last season. He's good. Ryan Blaney's doing good last season too, but I feel like if you can survive, there's always a big wreck at that race. If you can survive that wreck, you're pretty good for that race because a lot of people get knocked out by wrecks because they're just fighting and fighting, but I think that if you can survive the wreck, you have a good chance at winning. There's always, I think sometimes just like 15 drivers left, and it's like Corey LaJoie's first, or Michael McDowell won a couple of years ago, and he's, I think he's becoming a good driver, but still a very big upset. So, any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in a race, you're kind of thinking, if I'm at the head of the pack, I have less chance of wrecking. I mean, all the rookies and the lower guys, they're more likely to wreck than me, so I want to be up at the front. But at the same time, you're not as fuel efficient because you don't have as long as a draft. So it's kind of 2 things that you have to balance out. And it can also be hard to get position, even if it is at a super speedway, and you can just draft up a couple of cars. So it's definitely a lot of strategy and positioning and everything. So it's probably the most strategic race and logistic race of the year.
Yeah, and up front, I mean, there's just like you're battling up front. Everybody's like, I want first place, I want first place. Sometimes it's like you're first, and then somebody clips you in the back, and then you're wrecked. So even in the first, it's unpredictable. So Yeah, I think that's all we have for today. A lot of NBA games. I know the Warriors lost. Makes me sad because I'm a Warriors fan. But yeah, coming up on March Madness for college basketball. We'll talk about that in a month or two. And yeah, so yeah, any more last words to say?
Oh, I think that's it. We did it good.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you would please like and subscribe. That helps us out a lot. And thank you for viewing this video. Yeah, we'll see you next episode.